Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Like Brent said, I'm Emily Crouch. I'm the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs, and we appreciate you taking time to come listen to the business community's agenda and the priorities that we have this session. Grateful to have these legislative leaders on the stage with us and championing these issues for us. They'll dig into each of the priorities that they're working on. The State Chamber is the voice of business at the Capitol. We are proud to represent businesses across the state. We want to make this the best state in the country to do business, raise a family, and grow here. This agenda supports that mission, and we're excited to, again, roll that out. There are three main pillars for our agenda this year: workforce development, tort reform, and tax policy. All these pillars have legislation, like I said, that our legislators will go into a little bit more, that are going to help businesses across the state as well as every industry. I'm lucky to have these talented lawmakers with me here. I will briefly introduce them and then let them dig into the issues that they're working on. To my left, Senator Seifried of Claremore. Also to my left, Representative Brian Hill of Mustang. To my right, Representative Suzanne Schrieber from Tulsa. Also to the right, Representative Erick Harris of Edmond and Representative Gerrid Kendrix of Altus. We want to say a big thank you to these legislators for their support. This is the third straight year that our agenda will focus heavily on workforce development, continuing to make progress in the area of workforce development. Proud that the Workforce Commission has hired a fantastic new director, but still there's a lot of work to do to support businesses and their workforce needs. A lawmaker who has been with us from the very beginning on this, Representative Brian Hill, kick it over to you.
Thank you, Emily, and thank each of you for being here today. You know, workforce touches every one of our lives, and we can talk economic development. If we're not talking workforce, we're just not talking. Since the creation of the Workforce Commission in 2023, we've remained laser focused on strengthening our state's use of data in workforce and economic development decisions. With the Commission's nationwide search now resulting in a very strong director now hired, our next step is the development of Data Hub to identify economic trends and workforce needs. The Commission's Data Hub will serve as a resource to all and keep us on track towards common workforce system goals. Two bills that I'd like to point out in that process are SB 662 and SB 663. Authored by Senator Adam Pugh and myself. They give the Workforce Commission the resources and direction it needs to accomplish its mission of analyzing the state's workforce needs while ensuring it is also collaborating on solutions. Just to give you a little bit of detail, 662, it simply sets up the program lanes. It's going to help give guidance for the Workforce Commission. These lanes will define target areas of focus and encompass all aspects of education and our workforce systems, which, as you know, are fairly vast. When you ask the question of who owns workforce in the state, when these questions were happening, you had over 30 different agencies that would raise their hand. Now we're starting to see a correlation of all of us connecting those pieces together. Also, SB 663, what it does is it simply moves the revolving fund that we had previously set up for workforce development. We previously had it housed at the Department of Commerce. Now that the Workforce Commission is up, has its director in place, now we're going to move it to its proper location, which is the Workforce Commission, which has been the goal. As a business owner myself, I all too well understand how crucial workforce needs are for businesses in our state. You can't create a thriving business without a strong workforce. We need to support our education and our workforce systems with the tools and resources they need to collaborate to meet our demand. In my role as the House Commerce and Economic Development Oversight Committee Chair, I'm committed to finding common sense solutions to give business access to the skilled workforce they need. Simply stated, together we can build a stronger future for our children, for our families, and our communities. Standing together, we will move Oklahoma forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hill. We're grateful for your continued support. And as he mentioned, Senator Pugh is the lead author on those bills, unfortunately unable to be here today. He is also leading an effort for us in the K-12 education reform space to make sure the metrics on our schools' report cards are reflecting what districts are truly responsible for, getting our students career ready. So Senate Bill 711 by Senator Adam Pugh will remove chronic absenteeism from the report card and is one of the many pieces in the K-12 education space that Senator Pugh is working on this year. And so I'm excited to have him champion that. I'm going to move on to our next area. We talk a lot about getting Oklahoma kids ready for their next phase, whether that's in the going to college, into the military, or straight into a career. And all the data shows that when a student is exposed to a career early in their adolescence and education, the results are really positive. And so one of our leads this year and a bright rising star in the Senate, Senator Seifried, is going to tell us a little bit more about work-based learning opportunities and how to expand those for students.
Thank you, Emily, and good morning, everyone. I'm really proud to be here as Vice Chair of the Senate Education Committee. We're sad that Senator Pugh can't be here today, but we do talk a lot about how to align education to meet the needs of workforce, and especially as our businesses are having issues hiring candidates who are ready to start on the job day one. I know as a small business owner in my family, this is something that we talk about often, is trying to find people who are ready and have the skills to meet the needs that we have. And so I'm really, really proud to author Senate Bill 95. It's a simple bill that clarifies who is and isn't included in workers' compensation coverage, but we think that this is a really strong signal to try to share with businesses to open up those work-based learning experiences, internships, and we talk a lot about apprenticeships in the state of Oklahoma as we're trying to build our workforce. And so sometimes business owners aren't sure the proper way to cover or if this student is covered in their workers' comp. And so we've clarified that here, and I think this can really be a really good opportunity to try to open up some opportunities for our students and our businesses who are struggling with obviously trying to run their business and find the employees, and they also want to support the future workforce. And so this ties in really well with some of the graduation requirements that we passed last year, trying to get more work-based learning involved, trying to open up avenues for apprenticeships. And so I think this is a small thing to be able to clarify and tie into the pathway units. And so we're hoping that this can spur some growth and some opportunities for students there. So I'm really proud to be working on this year and look forward to working with the people you see here to get it across the finish line.
We have been preaching for the last 3 years that childcare is workforce infrastructure. Getting people back into the workforce, providing a safe, affordable option for families is a priority. We are proud to have Representative Suzanne Schrieber back with us up on this stage and leading this issue for us again this year. Grateful for her commitment, her passion for the issue, and kick it over to her to fill us in.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. I'm honored to be here to discuss this robust agenda to build and support Oklahoma's workforce, which all begins with a healthy child care that is affordable, safe, and accessible. We still have only one spot for every 3 children in the state, and we still have rates that are costing families as much as an in-state tuition. So this is an issue that we have work to do on. We're bringing back our child care employer tax credit, which would incentivize employers to share in the cost of their employees' child care. And this is just one of the ways that we can really figure out how to pull some levers in this system that supports all the other systems. So parents are employees. They need this child care to go to work and work on Representative Hill's, Senator Seifried's, all the things that we're working on really starts with childcare and a healthy, safe, affordable, accessible childcare system. We've spent 3 years working on this. Businesses have not changed their tune. They are desperate to get these improvements. They are desperate to make sure that their employees have what they need. They are desperate to find those employees that are out there that are staying home because they cannot afford or they cannot find childcare that they need. And so we are here with this solution. House Bill 1850 offers that, and I look forward to getting it done this year. Thank you all.
Thank you, Representative. Also glad to have Senator Kristen Thompson leading that effort for us in the Senate. Know that those will collide at some point, and we'll get it done before the end of session. Moving on to the next pillar in our agenda, tort reform. We want to make sure Oklahoma businesses are spending less time in the courtroom and more time running their businesses. This means the right, responsible, and fair legal environment for these businesses to operate, an area that Representative Harris will be leading for us this year, third-party litigation financing reform. Representative Harris, can you talk us through why transparency is so important in this area?
Well, thank you, Emily, for inviting me here to talk about this very important topic, and I'll say good morning to everyone. My full-time job is being an attorney. I've been an attorney for about 10 years, and the majority of my time I've been a business litigator. And one thing that I've noticed is there has been an uptick in what I will call frivolous litigation that is impacting our business community. We can often talk about wanting to make Oklahoma a top 10 state for business growth and development, but you have to have a regulatory structure in place that supports that. And that's what this legislation does. This legislation on third-party litigation financing would require the disclosure, or would allow the disclosure, rather, of third-party litigation funding. This legislation also has some national security implications by banning third-party litigation funding that's done by foreign adversaries of the United States. Now, with this legislation, we don't care about, mom funding, the litigation related to their daughter's personal injury claim. That's not what we care about. What we care about is a concerted effort by some individuals and some entities to influence the business community by recruiting individuals to engage in frivolous litigation. One thing to note related to tort reform is, these high verdicts that aren't supported by the fact pattern that's present in the case, these high verdicts have a direct impact on the economy in Oklahoma. Here recently, studies have shown that there's about $3.7 billion in gross product that is lost each year in Oklahoma due to frivolous litigation. This bill, this third-party litigation funding, would allow for us to see through transparency if there are those concerted efforts to influence courts. We've seen this issue actually in other states like Louisiana, where there are federal charges right now against certain individuals who worked to recruit individuals to engage in frivolous litigation that impacted a certain sector. Look forward to moving this legislation through the legislative process and hopefully getting across the finish line. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Harris. We've also got Senator Howard leading that effort in the Senate. Additionally, in the legal reform space, we are proud to be working with Senator Julie Daniels and Pro Tem Lonnie Paxton on a workers' compensation fix that arose this past year following a Supreme Court decision, this year, in 2024. The case resulted in uncertainty for businesses who were using contractors and subcontractors. We're going to support legislation this session to protect businesses and their contractors from undue liability on workers' compensation claims by ensuring that the role of private contracts is safeguarded for those businesses to engage in. A lot of legal speak. Glad we have some attorneys helping us continue through these issues. And finally, certainly last but not least, I'm proud to have Representative Gerrid Kendrix with us again this year. He has been a champion on tax policy and tax reform since he joined the Oklahoma House of Representatives. They're an important factor when it comes to competitiveness for the state of Oklahoma. We can't just have a low rate. We've got to have a competitive tax code. So I'm going to ask Representative Kendrix to come talk about some areas where you can be more competitive.
Great. Thank you. Good to see all of you here this morning, and I'm always excited to talk about taxes. My background is a CPA, had an accounting practice in Altus for about 35, 36 years now. When I came to the Capitol, one of my focus was on looking at how do we simplify the process. You can use the word simplify, streamline, reform, all of those kind of work along the same lines. And what I'm trying to do is figure out a way to create a tax structure that is understandable and stable. When we look at business, one of or a couple of the major things that businesses look at in coming into a state is, do they have a stable regulatory structure? I appreciated that throw out there from my friend Representative Harris, but also a stable tax structure where they know what they can expect. We have had a kind of a working group over the last several years. Myself, Representative Mark LePike from Claremore, Representative Cody Maynard from Durant. And on the Senate side, we've worked with Senator Dave Rader from the Tulsa area and Senator Howard from down in my neck of the woods. And we've come up with several ideas on things. One of the big things we want to do is take out some things that we believe are punishing our local or state businesses here. One of those is a bill that has to do with the apportionment factor of the revenue that a company has. And I didn't get the bill number. Maybe you'll have that with Representative Maynard. Representative Maynard is running a bill this year to move us to a single sales factor. And what that does is it keeps our in-state businesses from being punished for being in the state. Right now we have a triple factor that's based on payroll, based on assets, and then based on sales. And when that does that, we wind up having our state businesses that are here inside the borders of the state paying more based on the fact that they have assets and payroll in the state than someone just across the state line. So it could encourage a business to move just across the state line and still operate in Oklahoma. So that's one of our big reforms that will be heard in the AB Finance Committee today, I believe at 1:30. So if you have interest in that, certainly something to watch for. The next thing we've looked at is trying to move from a six bracket tax code to a single bracket. And one of the big reasons there, we believe that is a simplifying or a streamlining of the tax code, because now we will have one rate. And anytime we want to do a tax cut of any sort, this will allow us to do a tax cut that affects everybody equally. So we're looking at, and I know Representative LePike and myself both have bills working towards that direction of trying to move us to a single rate, which would essentially raise the standard deduction to where all of those lower brackets would see the exact same tax break. All brackets would see anybody that pays income tax would see the exact same tax break by removing those tax brackets. So those are two of the main items that we're working on this year, and trying to get an overall picture where we're not just selectively picking things here and there, but trying to come up with an overall policy that makes the state better for business.
Thank you, Representative Kendrix. I'd be remiss if I didn't note that a lot of reforms have already been taken up by the legislature in the last 2 to 3 years. We went from 30th in the country to 19th after reforms were passed by Representative Kendrix and his colleagues, but there's still more work to do. States around us are doing the same thing. They're reforming their tax code, and so they're on our heels. So I'll open it up to questions. Thanks for being here.
How are you addressing the housing shortages for workers?
Definitely understand the need for more housing. As we talk as an organization about economic development, know that there's over a dozen bills filed this year by members in both parties to address affordable housing, to do studies on long-term, looking at how we grow the number of affordable housing. That's not addressed on our agenda this year, but we are actively monitoring what is being proposed by the legislature.
So the child care issue, you brought up that you guys have been working on that for the past 3 years. What has made it difficult to get across the line, or what have you achieved already?
Yeah, I was going to kick it over to you.
I think part of it is getting people to understand that this is not babysitting. This is a critical piece of our economy. It is workforce infrastructure, and people are learning and coming to that understanding as we are advocating. So sometimes a piece of legislation takes some education. And now we're seeing employers, few and far between, but overly generous, great employers offering to share in the cost of their employees' child care, and those people deserve a tax credit. They're setting an example. And so I think as that comes on, we will have we'll have more in.
Attention. A tornado warning has been issued for Oklahoma County.
Well, I think this is a shelter.
room in the building.
Attention, a tornado warning.
That might be newsworthy.
Yeah.
I think
Is it real?
yeah. Well, let's see.
We're in the basement.
Yeah, yeah.
Attention, attention, attention.
I don't know if that's, I don't think that's.
I gotta tell you, seventh year, and that's the first time I've heard that one.
So I would just,
Okay, so anyway.
on childcare or something else.
Sort of along the same topic and then also with the overall agenda, it seems like that the legislation that would encourage development of daycare centers might cost taxpayers a little bit more money. The budgets might have to increase like with, through DHS. And there's a lot of concern among lawmakers about the overall impact of these requests and that might apply to some of these other bills on the budget. So, does the chamber have concerns about budget inflation and the ability to get these bills through because of those concerns?
Sure. I mean, we're watching the Board of Equalization meeting here in the next week or so to see what number is certified. We've seen the projections.
Tornado warning has been issued for Oklahoma County,
We've seen the projections, and so that's a concern. We're going to work with these legislative leaders as well as the appropriations chairs and the leaders in the House and the Senate to navigate that, as we know really what the roadmap looks like after the numbers are finalized. As far as the childcare piece, this would be employers supporting their employees' out-of-pocket expenses or setting up on-site at their own facilities. And so this would not require DHS to
Yeah, it's directly through the tax commission, so it's a tax credit. So this is contained in and of itself. Other issues around DHS are different, but it is a tax credit which is calculated not in an appropriation, but how much revenue we have. Which if we have more workers, we'll have a lot more revenue.
That's true. That's exactly true. Any other questions? Yeah.
There's been a pretty strong push, I think, over the last couple months on solar and wind farms and people opposed to that. How does the state chamber view that movement and kind of what's the response there?
I mean, we support energy in an all of the above approach that we're going to acknowledge that our state is a heavy oil and gas state, and we're going to appreciate the resources that come from there. As to the bills that have been filed this year in that arena, I can't really speak specifically to those.
This was just a drill. Attention all Capitol tenants. The recent announcement was just a drill. It was just a drill for the tornado. Thank you.
For the tornado? Yeah.
Unscheduled drill.
Yes.
Unscheduled.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? Because that was.
Attention. A tornado warning has been issued for Oklahoma County, including the state capitol complex. Proceed immediately to your designated indoor shelter location. Do not go outside. Stay away from exterior windows and doors.
Do you think he comes back on to tell us that one also was a drill?
Your question was on the A to F report card and how it ties for the business community now and into the future?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you could answer, but would we still track absenteeism at that point? And, how does that relate to what you guys need?
Yeah, I mean, we believe that students being in a classroom and present is priority number one. But we think that this is showing up in the report card elsewhere. If a student isn't present, the academic growth for that student or that school or the district is going to show. And so we almost feel like we're counting absenteeism in two different ways by looking at a student's academic growth as well as their absenteeism. It is a priority for them to be there, but school districts are doing everything in their power to get the students there. As to why the business community cares, the kid in sixth grade right now is going to be somebody's worker in the next decade or so. And so how do we make sure that we're grading our schools and acknowledging the job they're responsible for doing, which is to get that student career ready. We want that metric and the accountability that is the report card to really reflect that, so the business community can understand how strong or areas of improvement that are needed in the education system.
About the Workforce Commission, how short are they in funding? How much more money is needed to fully invest in these initiatives?
I'll start it, and then if you want to chime in. I mean, right now, they have been able to hire their director. There's a few other hires that I think are priority for the commission. How short or how much funding do they need is really a question for our legislature to answer, but also for the economy to answer of how much improvement and strategic alignment do we need to get the workforce that is needed in the future. And so the programmatic needs and the grants that could become available under the Workforce Commission, I don't want to say could be endless because we're not trying to grow an empire at the Workforce Commission, but there are resources that are needed to be able to build that. And
Thank you for the question. As you know, when we set up the Workforce Commission, the whole idea was how do we make sure that the needs of job creators in the private sector are actually being produced out of the systems of education, higher ed, career tech, trade schools. And so until now, we've not had that connection piece. That was the entire goal. They had an extensive search. It lasted close to a year, if you consider in the time it took to get the commissioners appointed and get everything in place. Now, they do have the initial seed fund that was set aside, I believe, 2 years ago. I think that was a 2023 vote. They do have that for operating expenses. The goal is, though, for them to operate with a small strategic team. We're not trying to build a behemoth here. The goal is to capitalize on the knowledge, to have those meetings with the job creators, and then to strategically provide a plan back to us, the legislature, that we can then implement to make sure those funds are going where they should be. Right? Like, rather than it just being the idea of, hey, let's grow this program or let's grow that program. And the simple for each of us is, right, all of us on this stage have heard multiple times, we need more engineers, more nurses, and more teachers, right? And yet the other day I sat in a room where we talked about the need for civil engineers. But then right after that, I was in a room talking about petroleum engineers, mechanical engineers. And the truth is if we're producing 1,000 new petroleum engineers when the need is 2,000, but we're getting it wrong on civil engineers, that doesn't make us a stronger, better workforce or state. The idea is how do we become strategic in the decisions that we're making and the funds that we're allocating into those that are creating the workforce. And so that's really where it is. The goal is not to create a bigger agency. We don't need that. What we need are individuals that every day are getting up, focused on workforce, having those crucial meetings with those that are creating the jobs, meeting with higher ed, career tech, trade schools, and finding out what it would cost for them to create those specific programs in order for us over the next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years, to be producing what we need in the workforce, not just generalized degrees. That's the goal.
Do you have a percentage of how understaffed they are?
Well, I mean, in fairness, right? Like, the new director was hired at the end of December. We're bringing her on. She's still in a matter of getting an office space. Part of that is working with OMES to work some of those details out. Those of us on this stage and our counterparts have worked to try and make that a little bit more fluid. I appreciate the work that's now being done to help accelerate that. And so from there, I think she will likely begin to hire some people on. I'd also like to commend the 9 commissioners, which all are extremely successful business leaders across our great state in multiple sectors who gave up their time personally in order to do this extensive search nationwide, right at 100 applicants, to make sure that we got the right person in. Now that she's here, I believe we're going to see a shift rapidly forward. I think it was just trying to take the time to get it right. And to be honest with you, I found that frustrating sometimes, right? Like, I move at the speed that I can, right? And I'm constantly trying to move forward. I commend the 9 commissioners on taking that steady time as job creators to make sure we got the right person instead of just right now. And I commend them on that. I think now you'll see that vision and that agenda move forward more rapidly. And I think you'll see, even through those 2 bills, our commitment as the legislature to make sure that's moving forward.
When it comes to the data hub that was listed in the bill, is that going to be some type of like private-public partnership? Is that something those workers will be doing? And kind of how is that going to be done?
Thank you for the question. If you knew me very well, everyone knows I'm the data guy, and I don't know how I became that guy, but like what I realized in the process up here is we get 15 different white papers like the ones in front of you, giving different pieces of data, right? But you get them from all of these different sources. And it was difficult to take them and kind of layer them together to make strategic decisions. So over this last year, both the House and the Senate have worked together to put together what we would call the prep map from the legislative standpoint, where we're bringing in that data from all of the different agencies. We've also met with Commerce as recent as earlier this week to talk through what their data sources look like. Because when you have 30 different agencies that all feel like they own workforce, and then you've got higher ed, career tech, trade schools, and they have their needs and their data, if you're not able to bring that data together into a centralized way to make centralized decisions, it really just ends up almost piecemeal. I believe we can do better. That is the role of the Workforce Commission. That will be part of what the legislature does to help them with that process. And I'm excited because someone asked me recently, well, how did you get all this data? Did you have to force it? Did you have to run a bill for it? We didn't. We simply asked all of the stakeholders to sit at a table. We told them the vision, and they started providing the data. And as they have, we as a state are able to now make better decisions. Now that we have the workforce director in place, I believe she will be able to take that data set that all of us have contributed into and help use that to shift us forward in workforce, but in all of these other areas that affect all of our lives, including childcare as well. So, thank you.
One more question, because these guys have got to get to committee meetings and do real work.
So can you clarify, someone clarify the third party? Who is the third party in these lawsuits? Attorneys have a right to seek clients, right? You know, the ambulance chasers, as they're sometimes called. So I want to make sure I understand, who are these third parties?
Most of the time, third parties are individuals, or rather entities, that are funded solely for the purpose of going out and investing in litigation. So I'll put it to you like this. Let's say I have a company and I know that Gerrid Kendrix, who's a wonderful attorney, by the way, has a personal injury suit, and he's the only individual in his law firm. He's sole proprietor. I, as an investor, will then go and say, well, hey, Gerrid, let me give you X number of dollars to fund this personal injury case. That's how third-party litigation funding works. Usually entities, sometimes individuals. Did that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Good.
I think that wraps us up. Thanks for being here.